Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 160th episode of the House of Light expansion to Book of Hours, our first run through YouTube, playing as the Archaeologist. Now, I have quite a bit on my to-do list. Part of that will come from the lessons, which we haven't got yet, but will be coming up. We're going to need... excuse me. We're going to need to talk with Zachary Wakefield about the current event. And then if I recall correctly, we were also improving the fisherman, and that was to open the sagging dock, if I believe. So, believe. I don't need to believe, but if I do recall correctly. And then there were some invitations for the salon, so I'm wondering actually if... Let's maybe get that done now. So, Nona's desk. I was wrong. It was Sky that I needed, but I should be able to get through. Alright, that gives me enough of a start here. I think at this point we are really just waiting on all the different texts to become available. Alright, we will read the Grunwald Provision and Zachary Wakefield in a moment. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. It is winter, and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the Sweet Bones, with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. And memories don't last long outside books, but it's made a difference for the day. So we've got collaboration and memory. Now, I'm hoping I wrote down the details for the... Yes, it was Tryst... did I do the lunar globe? It doesn't look like I did. It feels like I did it, though. Okay, proffer a tool. I can lend my assistant something to help, increasing their abilities. So this means that Wakefield will be on ice for a bit, but that's fine. Now I just need to post it. Alright, Kokil Emirajibi. Douglas, Wakefield, and Daymare. A little water splashes on the stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. Now, I think this was just to replace the water that I'd poured for the salon, but I've probably drawn more from the well than I really need to. I'll get over it, obviously, but... Okay. Oh, here we go. You know what? We even have a wintry typewriter. Now, I think there may have been a couple of texts I could have read over this time. I do have sort of my to-do list here. So invitations to the salon, I had a number of skills that I wanted to improve, and then the note for the sagging dock. But at this point, I'm happy enough to just sort of run ahead with the current plans. Now, for the sagging dock, we wanted 14 moons, so I believe one of those is going to be fish. And then we've got the mist-kissed water already. And then after a minute, we should be able to get Zachary Wakefield in conversation. And for Daymare, I think we can just get away with glass blowing and vessel crafting. Let's hope it is equally possible to forget this again. So, we've got... What I kind of wanted to hit with that is we're sort of back to where we were in terms of the opening the rooms. Now this, I don't think on its own is going to give me too much. It's really more just about opening the final rooms of the Cougar bit, but it's an opportunity that we had. Moving forward, I do want to eventually go to the Wintry Forbidding. Well, essentially all of the different rooms here. The Fluttering Crypt is probably a little better suited for Mr. Kill. This is just because of that extra winter that he has, and then we can use Whist to provide another one as well. So those individual values sort of start adding up. But given the fact that we succeeded here, and we have enough fish, it may not be a bad idea for me to try the Perilous Path. Tomorrow wouldn't be a terrible way to... wouldn't be a terrible choice, just because I could... Yeah, as long as I didn't have a tryst I needed to give up. I'm definitely warm to this idea of opening up the Perilous Path tomorrow. Of course, we'll worry about today before we go any further. Here we go, the Book of Masks, Athena Vanna's work on the rogue hour called the Vagabond, who is also known as the Laughing Thrush, the Centipede, the Pilgrim, and by many other names, or as Vanna has it, Masks. The Mask of the Laughing Thrush, says Athena Vanna, had a great friendship with the sun and splendor, the highmost hour of the Mansus, now divided and departed. The Mask of the Sight Thief painted the river in the Mansus. The Mask of the Vagabond was forbidden the Mansus, not for what she had done, but for what would occur. The Mask of the Centipede recalled her birthplace, Maya, which had punished her for creeping into the temple precinct. This mask cursed Maya to drink only dust and be remembered only by the wind, for not beneath any mask does she forgive, and the centipede's hunger is not to be forgotten. Alright, so there's the weaving and not working. Now, one drawback here is I think I've forgotten how I was going to arrange all of these, and we got an impulse for our trouble. So, unless I can come up with a nectar use for it, I don't think it will matter. To the impulse shelves. Alright, now I know I'd spent a bunch of time getting this sorted out, but... Okay, so Meniscate Reflections... That clearly is not going to be weaving and not working. Spices and Savors. Now that had a nectar angle to it, so it can't be that. Megaphine Mysteries seems like a weaving and not working. Then Herbs and Infusions. Okay. I've seen enough to make a decision, so let's take Megaphine Mysteries to start. Now, one thing I probably could have done was... Well, maybe I did. Yeah, so Megaphine Mysteries is Interesting. Let me just look at my notes here. Okay, I kind of think I understand why I did it this way, but I'm a little weirded out by it too. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Improve the skill to level 3. Okay, and game chips. There we go. I definitely feel like I should be reading a bit more right now, but I think at this point I'm gonna let the existing memories sort of go through. Part of it just comes from the fact that I have these individual skills, so I'm gonna be, like, for bringing up Meniscate Reflections, that's not gonna require a whole lot, and even Spices and Savors, that's really 2, and I already have the Impulse, so if I had a lot to do, then I'd sort of feel the pressure from the final minute of the day, but right now I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving any obvious steps undone. Alright, better now. And one more encounter with the fisherman. My original plan had been to use Denzel to get me some memories, but I was obviously way too optimistic in terms of how I'd use the time, so I can offer my assistant something to drink. There it is. Sorry, I was a little unsure about where the remaining book was. The skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. So I'll try to be a little bit better at moving the cards around. Okay, now herbs and infusions. So I think that one I'll take advantage of the impulse just because I don't really see a whole lot of other uses for it. And then we'll do the solace and the storm. And then the justifications here are that theoretically those are ones I could get from a conversation with a visitor. I should double check that I'm still... So Spices and Savors can use metal. Actually, metal and shaft. And Meniscate Reflections can use Arab metal and shaft. Okay. So now would not be a bad time for me to think about how I'm dividing these remaining elements. So if it's for Spices and Savors... Actually, you know what? The heart doesn't really help. So the funny thing is that with the impulse, I should have used that with Spices and Savors. So let's focus on Meniscate Reflections first. Edge and Forge. So these don't really do anything for me. And I think it's just as easy at this point for me to toss kind of any candidate. So One appeal about Torg's cleansing here is that I'll have the contradiction. I'll have the edge from Torg's cleansing. That's the 2 for Menescate Reflections, and I'm good to go, which means that Spices and Savors can focus on its Forge and Nectar, and in that way I don't have any overlap between the 2. Now, an ideal world, I suppose, would be one in which I don't have to worry about let's say Denzel generating a new memory. I don't really think that's going to be a problem here, so I'll maybe be a little cautious in terms of the specific elements of the soul that I occupy, but as far as books are concerned, we'll just go for... I think I've done a few of these, but I'm going to go back to Carmine Petal Revisited. So that's the Foresight. And then if I want, I can do the Impulse. I think we would be doing... Was it... No, I guess it was Debate of the Seven... Or no, we did that too. So I guess... Oh no, we're all the way through, actually. Okay. I wonder if there's another Forge or Nectar I can get. Probably Regret. Let's do the Fallen Cross. Okay. So invitations are out. We're on our way to leveling up the various skills. At this point, I should probably be... Maybe what I'll do here is I'll say, set aside the Arab for here. Set aside the Arab for Menescate Reflections, and set aside the metal for Spices and Savors. But at this point, I should probably be using my remaining elements of the soul to try and make a little bit more of the day. It also appears that I don't have a Newman, so I should maybe consider reading one of those books. Oh, actually, maybe I was holding off on reading one of those books so I could read a new one. That sounds about right. Okay, I don't have any need for the Tryst, so I don't mind using that. Not sure what we're going to get at the Gull Colony, but I'll take the opportunity. There's a side of me that thinks that maybe I should have been a little bit more ambitious in terms of reading some more books, but I have a feeling I'd probably be saying the opposite if we got to the salon and we had leftover lessons. So I am curious, though, about what the day is going to bring us. And just take it a minute here. I think I will take a minute and harvest some Blue Crown. Alright, so there's the 14 that we need for the Sagging Dock. We'll now speak with Zachary Wakefield, marksman, detective, renegade. He has always been a quiet man, but since he left the Suppression Bureau, he has grown even quieter and terribly still, except for his fingers and for his eyes, always in restless motion. And this is about the affair of the Grunwald Provision. After the dissolution of Grunwald's permanent circus, its assets were disposed of by the Bureau. That was during one of the Bureau's occasional funding crises, and the Grunwald Provision sanctioned the sale of the circus's assets for cash, bypassing some of the usual checks for oniric hazard. In hindsight, this has started to look like a mistake. Sorry for what happened with the circus. Some of it might have been clarities, ovidic forms, conducive, could have been. I need to understand what. So we are looking for basically a winter 4 or lower. I think I'll have enough. I think. Thank you. All right, so I'm pretty much at the end of my priorities for today, so now it's just kind of a question of implementation. Sagging Dock. The Storms have had their way with this since the prison was abandoned. It won't last much longer. So, on to the Fisherman's Assistants. working with Denzel, really, this is just going to be a question of seeing how many more memories we can generate. Those might be nice for taking something overnight. And then I could maybe try and make something. We won't have enough time to do any more harvesting. Actually, that's not entirely true. I can probably actually do one more batch of things. Okay, but the big reveal for today. My deeds, my powers, my achievements, and the injustices perpetrated against me. A diatribe by Hokebald of Posend, formerly of the Order of Immortals called the House of Leith, later the Order Lamea, and much later the Obliviates. He has scores to settle. Hokebald boasts of his royal descent and insists that the magics of the Forge are more effective when practiced by those of noble blood. Posend complains of his condemnation by the Ordo Lamea. He acknowledges that he has undergone alterations after the consummation of that particular delight, but insists that these changes are both elegant and inevitable. Who is the fire and who is the fuel, he asks rhetorically. 3 transformations and liberations. Okay, so I think I'm going to have a little bit of work to do to rearrange that, and I think I definitely need to rearrange the library a bit. I'm using the overflow a bit too much, but on the other hand, I know there have been a couple of slower entries. This may count as one of them, incidentally. So I want to, where I can, try and shepherd these through the... Yes, this has to be... I want to try and shepherd these through sort of the big events, like the Salon. So I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Now, if I recall correctly, one of the reasons we did this with spices and savors was because we basically don't have any forge or moth to raise up. So if that's the case, it probably makes sense to either raise up weaving and not working or resurgences and emergences. I'm slightly more inclined to level up weaving and not working in this case. One, because I have the cheerful ditty, so that gives me a hand. And then the other advantage is I already had a weaving and not working text, so it's just a chance for me to bring it up. So the idea here is, it's not too sophisticated, but it's essentially saying that when I wind up with one of these overflow lessons where I already have, you know, all of the elements where I want them to be in terms of my overall plans, at least as far as they work out right now. I have realized there's actually a couple of holes in those plans, but they're not ones related to the transformations and liberations lessons. But the idea here will be to try and make sure that the lowest level lesson goes up. We'll rearrange all of this when the time comes. Oh, but I should actually be reading towards that now, so. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Okay. So we've got the Carmine Petal revisited. We've got the Fallen Cross, so that will take care of spices and savors. And if it is weaving and not working, in practical terms, we really just need the one text. So I guess I did say that we'd gone through impulses. Is there a moth or a heart that I've been neglecting? I'm sure there is. Whether or not I remember it is another question. Oh, one other thing I should have done. The Curious Hunch is going to be something that gets overwritten at the end of the salon, so I should have found a use for that. It's probably a little too late to try and boost up Reverend Timothy for a trip down below, but... Okay, well, let's not stand on ceremony. Traveling at Night, Volume 1. So I think tomorrow tomorrow in game I'm definitely doing the salon. I think next stream will be or VOD or whatever we call these will be the salon. I think the best I can do right now would be to maybe queue up. Well, yeah. So I was thinking I could maybe queue up a few books that I would read after the salon, but it occurred to me that that doesn't quite work the way that I think it should. Simply because I don't know what lessons I'm getting from the salon. If I did, then I could make some plans, but the whole point of not going in with jumping in with both feet was the fact that the salon may change some of my priorities here. Anyways, the Carmine Petal Revisited, an apparently theoretical project proposed by Lionel of the Society of the Noble Endeavor, which might permit the imprisonment of a renegade forge name, a very heavily revised edition of an earlier and even more controversial work. The book was evidently revised sometime after the Wars of the Roads had ended, but even then this kind of discussion would have been politically difficult. Lionel suggests that the disciplines of Scar and Hammer together would be necessary to create such a prison, but that either on its own would serve to release its occupant. So I think the time has come. Remember, it says here that this is about the imprisonment of a renegade forge name. Disciplines of Scar or Hammer together is necessary to create. One on its own would release the occupant. There's definitely a few other hints that have been placed. I think I have enough now to... Nope, I'm currently using Disciplines of the Scar. But I guess I also have Disciplines of the Hammer, so... Actually, what I think I will do here, so unveil a treasure of the house, align the surfaces of fire and air to unveil a treasure of the house. I'm curious to see what it says when I do Scar. Yeah, it's definitely not the first time that we've gotten a hint for the oubliette, but we have a bunch of extra elements of the soul tonight, so I can finally take advantage of it. The Fallen Cross, in which Julian Cosley, Magus Immortal, occasional anarchist, argues that through language the Carapace Cross decayed to seed the lives of our ancestors. Speech is a wound, silence is silver. There is no silver door, nor can there be, even in the moon's house. Without language there can be no words. Without words there can be no message. But only in silence can there be no error. And lo, even in that beginning, in the first of messages, an error. Thus did we enter the house. It also occurred to me that I was getting Torg's Cleansing so that I could raise Menace Gate Reflections, but of course we had to deal with the fact that we were getting a Foresight, so... Ah well. The cleansing has left my skin burning, my teeth throbbing. The chorality rumbles beneath the membranous surfaces of the waking world. Alright, so... Name the scars in Iron and Night to unveil a treasure of the house. Or align the surfaces of fire and air to unveil a treasure of the house. So which one do I think the archaeologist would use? I think I'll do name. I probably would have meditated on that a little bit longer, but it will not have an overall effect on the playthrough. All right. Loading dock crane. Long ago, this was the route by which provisions entered the jail, and by which prisoners failed to escape. We've got abandoned luggage, and a records box, and a crate of supplies. So my first priority still is leveling up the skills. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Now, if I'm going to level up weaving and not working, that means I need to leave a fet aside. Would have been better for me to use the shaft, actually, but that's fine. We'll still get over it. But for the rest, let's talk with Denzel, though not with any major expectations. He might even reply. And I'll go a little bit over tonight, well, hopefully just a little bit over tonight, with the, I mostly want to try and finish off the day to make sure that we can spend most of next episode on the salon. So 90 seconds, we should be able to do another batch. Unexpected finds in the folds of earth and sky. Contraband jetsam flung overboard in furtive haste. Few flowers flourish in the depths of winter. Blue crown is one of those few. And scraps from the aisle's edge. So it's important that we keep the fet set aside. So another walk on the moor. I guess I don't really have anything. I should have used the fet a little more wisely. But we can definitely use the Faust and the Gull Colony. I was going to say I can make another Solomon's Preparation, but we actually have more than enough for that. What might be interesting, though, is perhaps I could try making... I'm thinking maybe a Glasskeeper toxin. Or Glassfinger toxin, sorry. Poured out. If I was particularly silly, I could use the Curious Hunch. I think I could probably get by. Actually, you know what? That may not be a bad... It may not be a bad option right now. So my alternatives... So I could give up Moth Orchid, but we already know I'm losing the Curious Hunch tomorrow, so... Now maybe it'd be better if I made a Sacrament Asite out of it. Yeah, Sacrament Asite is a little less wasteful. Traveling at Night Volume 1, the annotated dream journals of Christopher Olopoli, sometimes called the only readable occultist, literate, entertaining, bewildering. The wood lies outside the walls of the mansis. As any student of the histories knows, the mansis has no walls. Olopoli describes how he came to make repeated visits to a dream wood via what he calls silver dreams. Trying to think your way to the wood, he explains, is like thinking your way to being in love, but I did find a secret that helped. So we'll give it 1.7 seconds. We will Use the shaft. Alright, he does a lot with silence, this man. There's the spice, the savers. Now, again, before we open any packages, we will take the weaving and not working. This is why we saved the FET. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. And so at this point, anything I can do to try and employ the Arab Fost, Shapt, and Whist is ideal. I have slightly less than a minute before sundown, which means if it takes 90 seconds, it's a candidate. But so for instance, the Solomon's preparation is looking increasingly tempting. But I'm wondering if, nah. I was thinking maybe I could try making another glassfinger toxin, but we'll save that for another day. I think I'll just let the timer lapse. So I think I'll probably leave it at that. I'll maybe just try and do my wrap up and sign off while the timer runs. So we've gotten the skills that I wanted leveled up. Any of the remaining time will be spent opening the packages. I think in reality we'll just have one of those. Here, impossibly preserved, enfolded in the scars inflicted by the former Unveil a treasure of the house. Here, impossibly preserved, enfolded in the scars inflicted by the former prisoner's energies. The sun's design. So, another tablet, a book with very few pages, grants Watchman's paradoxes, which I'm sure will create its own set of challenges, but there we go. But yeah, so we've got the main priority in terms of dealing with the lessons we've dealt with. We're ready to do the salon in the morning, or not in the morning, but we're ready to do that tomorrow in game. And then after that, one, we'll try and figure out where we put ourselves in terms of the Tree of Wisdoms. And then following that, it's kind of obvious the two things I want to do, right? Read books and open rooms, and that's kind of what the whole game is. There's a slight weight that I want to give towards reading books, just because it's, we really overdid it in terms of just having this backlog. But the fact of the matter is, it is winter, which does mean I have sort of a useful moon character that I can work with on the perilous path. And in fact, we have, we've got the glass of water. We've got basically everything we need to be able to open up that pathway. So we will definitely take care of that. I think I will do that tomorrow in game. And then what I might also do as well with the surplus of Shapt that I have, I will probably also take the time to open up the contraband jetsam and then all of the different items that I find in here. I still won't make it so that I'm in danger of missing out on something during the salon, but I think we probably have enough to, I think we've got enough elements of the soul now to be able to do more than just wait for the salon to finish on the salon day. Of course, the one thing that I am potentially giving up with that is the option to read certain books during the salon. But the truth is that I've always had more elements of the soul available at the end of the day than I normally think is appropriate. So I'm on paper giving something up, but in practice not really giving it up. So anyways, all of that will be resolved in Wednesday's episode. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.